You ever wonder what it takes to get a plane off the ground? I ain't talking about the mechanics. I'm talking about the men and women behind the controls, your pilots. We're going to dive deep into the world of aviation and explore 21 things pilots are absolutely forbidden from doing during a flight. You might be surprised by some of these, but trust me, they're all in place for a reason, to keep everyone safe, from takeoff to touchdown. So buckle up, get ready for takeoff, and let's explore the fascinating world of what pilots can't do while they're soaring through the air. You ever notice how they tell you to turn off your cell phone before takeoff? Well, that goes double for the folks in the cockpit. Pilots can't be scrolling through Instagram or texting their buddies while they're flying a multi-ton hunk of metal. Pilots need to be in constant communication with air traffic control. And believe me, you don't want any interference with that. Here's a rule that makes perfect sense. Pilots can't touch a drop of alcohol within 8 hours of a flight. That's right, 8 hours. Alcohol and altitude don't mix, plain and simple. It affects your judgment, your reaction time, your coordination, all things you definitely need when you're responsible for hundreds of lives. Think pilots can just pop a couple of aspirin and call it good if they're feeling under the weather? Think again. There's a whole list of medications that pilots are forbidden from taking, even over-the-counter stuff. We're talking about anything that could impair their judgment, their vision, their ability to think clearly. There's no room for error. No sleeping on the job, literally. You know how on long flights they sometimes have a second crew so the pilots can take turns resting? Well, here's the catch. Both pilots can't sleep at the same time, ever. You've got to have at least one pilot in that cockpit, alert and ready to go, no matter what. Different meals for different pilots. This one might sound a little strange, but pilots aren't allowed to eat the same meal as their co-pilot. It's about food poisoning. Imagine if both pilots got a bad batch of chicken or something, so they eat different meals just in case. The cockpit's not a ghost town. You ever notice how that cockpit door stays locked tight during the flight? There's a reason for that. Pilots can't leave the cockpit unattended. It's all about security and safety. Radio silence, please. There are times during a flight when pilots need to be completely focused on the task at hand. We're talking about critical phases of flight, like takeoff and landing. It's all about minimizing distractions and maintaining that laser focus. Checklists. Not just a suggestion. Pilots aren't just winging it up there. They've got checklists and standard operating procedures for pretty much everything. These checklists are designed to catch any potential problems before they become real problems. Calling in sick, literally. You know how some folks try to power through it when they're feeling under the weather? Well, pilots don't have that luxury. If they're not feeling 100%, they can't fly. Flying a plane requires peak physical and mental condition. The doctor will see you now, regularly. Pilots don't just get their medical checkups every now and then. They've got to have a valid medical certificate, and that means regular visits to a doctor who specializes in aviation medicine. They got to be in tip-top shape. Zero tolerance policy on everything. Pilots can't fly if they're under the influence of drugs. And I ain't just talking about illegal substances. We're talking about anything that could impair their judgment or reaction time. Drugs and flying simply don't mix. No powering through fatigue. You ever pulled an all-nighter and tried to function the next day? It ain't pretty, right? Now imagine trying to fly a plane when you're that tired. Not a good idea. There are strict regulations in place to prevent pilot fatigue. Sticking to the plan. In the air. Pilots can't just decide to take a detour because they feel like it. They've got a flight plan and they need to stick to it. Deviating from that plan could put the entire flight at risk. Air traffic control is the boss. You ever listen to those air traffic control conversations and wonder how they understand all that jargon? Well, pilots understand it, and they better. Air traffic controllers are like the conductors of the sky, making sure everything runs smoothly and safely. Put your devices away. Seriously. Remember how I said pilots can't use their cell phones during a flight? Well, that goes for other electronic devices too, at least unauthorized ones. Think about it. You wouldn't want your phone to mess with the plane's instruments while you're cruising at 30,000 feet. No fly, no how, without the paperwork. Pilots can't just hop in the cockpit and take off without proper documentation. These documents are essential for legal and safety reasons, and they're checked before every single flight. No barrel rolls, unless you're in the Blue Angels. Ever been on a flight where the plane suddenly dips or turns sharply? Yeah, that's usually not a good thing. Pilots can't just perform unauthorized maneuvers. It's all about safety and predictability. Restricted airspace, not a suggestion. There are certain areas in the airspace that are restricted for various reasons. Security, safety, you name it. This ain't just about avoiding a scolding, it's about preventing potential disasters. No hitchhikers in the cockpit. You ever wish you could bring your dog on a flight with you? Well, pilots can't even bring their family members into the cockpit without proper authorization. It's all about security, folks. Whether or not, it's serious business. You know how they sometimes delay flights because of bad weather? Well, that's because pilots can't just ignore weather conditions and advisories. Ignoring weather advisories is like playing Russian roulette with a plane full of people. Staying current, literally. Being a pilot isn't a one-and-done kind of deal. They've got to constantly update their skills and knowledge to maintain their licenses. It's a continuous learning process, and for good reason. Outro safe and sound. So there you have it. 21 things pilots can never do during flights. Now, I know some of these rules might seem a little strict, maybe even a little strange, but trust me, they're all in place for a reason, to keep everyone safe. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the world of aviation. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more informative content, and let me know in the comments what you found most surprising.